Hey, welcome to Basscraft. So I actually did my first gig in front of people in a year and a half this weekend. It was in Tullamore in Joe Lee's. It was called Rising 21. So I did my band Crowback Chicken. We did the early slot. I wasn't sure how I'd feel about it, but what it actually felt like was almost like when you were 17 and you did your first gig and the buzz you got off of being on stage and having people watching you. So yeah, it was amazing and I can't wait to do it again. Now I will say I found it a bit strange, the whole being around loads of people and just all that, because I'm so used to just being me in the shed and doing my own thing for the last year and a half, but I'm sure that will become normal fairly quickly. So a few more shows in the book and the phone is starting to ring again, because there's a lot of these kind of little gigs coming up. A lot of them are funded, government fund, Arts Council funded and that kind of thing. So yeah, really looking forward to doing more of that. So today's guest is Katie Thiroux. Kate is an LA-based bass player. She's a bass educator. She releases her own albums. She's an amazing singer, amazing double bass player, and she puts up really cool stuff on her Instagram channel. Her album in 2018 got voted as the best album by Downbeat Magazine. The album is called Offbeat. So really enjoyed listening to her stuff on Spotify in the run-up to this, chatting to her. And yeah, she's just a really engaging personality. She has her own podcast called The Hump. I didn't know what The Hump was. It's an American terminology to do it. I'll let you, she'll explain it in the podcast. There's no point me doubling up on it here. So we covered her bass journey, what she's doing in the education side of things, and how things are starting to ramp up again. She's getting busy, and we even got around to her, I think she was in Ireland for about 12 hours at Guinness Jazz Fest, and she told us how that experience went. So as usual, like, subscribe, all that stuff. Leave a review wherever you're watching this, or a comment, because that bumps it up. And yeah, I'll see you soon, and take care of yourself. So how are you? What's going on in your world, Katie?
Everything's good. Things are kind of opening back up and everything's moving along quickly. So just kind of trying to keep up with the pace of life after kind of being like moving at a turtle's speed the last, year and a half.
Yeah, you're a pretty busy touring musician. You used to be on the road like about 30 weeks of the year before all this.
Yeah, and it was great. It was fantastic. I'm glad I got to do it when I did. And, if it comes back again, that's great. If not, again, I'm glad I got to do it when I did.
I think everyone feels like that. Loads of people I've been talking to are like, I'm not sure about going back on the road as hard as I used to before. Like, I kind of like being at home and with my family and having time for stuff.
Yeah, I'd like to be a person. Yeah,
to be a person. But I took out the double bass out of the case for the first time in about 5 years, apart from if someone comes to my house and they want to look at it. But you're the first double bass player I've had on the show, so really happy to have you on.
Oh, cool. Yeah, it looks really good. Everyone should have a double bass just for that purpose.
It's not really very good. It's a cheap one, and it's the neck got snapped off there. I think about 2 years ago, I pulled my jumper up, and the stand was on the jumper, and but I put it back together. I think I might give it back to my mother. She used to love having it in the living room. She was kind of annoyed when I took it. She's like, "It's a lovely ornament. It looks great."
Yeah.
If I don't practice, I'll give it back to my mum for the sitting room. It looks good there.
Yeah, that'd be, like I said, everyone should have one. It just looks nice.
Just mess around on it. But you started really young. Like I was reading in your bio, at the age of 8, you started playing double bass straight away, was it?
Yeah, I started playing violin when I was 4, and there were these little like Christmas tree ornaments that you could actually play. And I'm the youngest of 4, so we all started violin at 4. And when I was 8, I was terrible. Like I wasn't one of those like genius kids, and I didn't. It's hard to like something when you're not good at it. It wasn't fun for me. So when I was 8, my mom said you could choose a different instrument. And she plays bass, and she said, "Why don't you try the bass, because everyone needs a bass player, so you'll always have a job." And but of course, as an 8-year-old, I'm not like that's not my reason for
worried
to do
about
this.
Your job prospects. Just
No. Yeah, no, I'm not worried about my place in the world just yet. But it was one of those magical moments that I'm sure a lot of people have with instruments or sports or other things. I got the bass. I had a really great teacher my first lesson, and it just clicked. It just like, it felt perfect in my hands. It was, of course it was a quarter size bass, but yeah, it was just like love at first touch and sight. It was amazing.
Almost like a cello nearly, a quarter size double bass. I
Yeah,
never
it was,
saw one before.
oh yeah, they're tiny, and and they sound not weird, but they're so small, so the frequency is it doesn't rumble as low as a bass. So yeah,
But the timbre is there anyway, the fretless
yeah,
sound and the usual.
yeah.
And was it classical music you would have been jumping straight into at that young, or were they teaching you jazz straight away?
It was classical from the get-go, which was an easy, transition from playing violin. And I studied like the classic. There's a great method, the George Vance method, and Samandel. But I had so much fun with it, and it wasn't until I was about 12 years old that I sing as well, and so I was kind of like singing, getting into like listening to jazz a little bit. And when I was 12, I was walking around the school, the after school program that I went to, and it was like the teacher literally came out of the classroom because he saw me wheeling my bass. He's like, "We need a bass player in our jazz combo," and I was like, "That's cool. I don't do that." And he's like, "No, it's cool." He's like, we just play by ear." And I said, "I don't do that either. I read music." And he's
Classical
like, "No,
musician, don't make me play by ear. Come on.
yeah." And so, but I went in, and it was all people my own age, and all, just figuring it out, learning your instrument. And we were learning everything off the records by ear. And it was, I wouldn't have wanted to start any other way, nor would I have known, but it was just, it was such a seamless way to start, and you have no idea what you're doing, which is perfect.
That's literally throwing you in at the deep end. You have to learn walking lines by ear at like 12 years old.
Yeah, and you don't know if you're doing it right or wrong. And I knew, okay, just walk on every beat, and okay, I learned what a root was and kind of what chords were, but yeah, you just learn by doing.
That's mad. And then you got the singing. Was that something that was always there? Did you sing the whole time, or did you get into a bit more then around that age?
Yeah, I got into it. I mean, I think like most people, like you just sing when you're a little kid, like in choirs. And I was doing a lot of classical singing, which again, I didn't like, but it was just something that I had to do. And then I would listen to the radio. We had a really good radio jazz station here at one point, and it was Charlie Parker and Dizzy Gillespie, like real bebop, and Ella Fitzgerald. And so I got into singing jazz. I loved the songs. And my teacher, I cajoled my way into studying with this really fantastic jazz singer, Tierney Sutton. And she said, we were working on jazz harmony. And instead of playing the notes on the piano to kind of figure it out, she's like, well, you play bass, figure it out on the bass. And then further along, I would play the bass note and then sing the harmony on top of it. So it just came as a way of how to practice. And then I just started accompanying myself that way.
Well, you did a lot of ear training very young. Like, is that something that you'd incorporate into your own lessons? Like, for my own teaching, ear training might come a few months in, but I wouldn't be straight in with it. Would you think it's better to just hit them with the ear training straight away, like getting them to transcribe things?
I think so. And like in my experience, theory made zero sense to me. Like it was all, you could tell me to play a major triad or diminished or whatever, and I wouldn't know. But if you just played it, I could play it back to you. And then you could tell me, oh, that was a diminished arpeggio or something. And then I would kind of reverse engineer it. But I do think it's so helpful to play by ear that way. And also as a musician, when you're trying to figure it out, you start to really learn the sounds that you like instead of someone telling you play this or this chord. It's like, yeah, you can, but go explore and find out why you like the sharp 11 on a dominant 7 chord, and you don't know it's the sharp 11 yet, and then you can go, oh, I like this note, what is it, why, how else can I use it? So I like to kind of go about it that way, but everybody's different. So some people really prefer, okay, I'm gonna go read this book and then apply this, which is cool too.
Yeah, well, I definitely think writing without a bass is better. One of my students, she'd only been playing the bass for about 3 months, and she wrote her first bass line, and she put in a ninth in it. And I said, oh, that's nice. You put a ninth in, and she's, I don't know, but I like the sound of it. Like,
yeah,
that was a cool way to do it. Like,
yeah, definitely.
And I was listening to your record earlier. I was really enjoying it, especially the song. It's the Willow something, and there was like just you singing and your bass together. That's like such a good combo. Just the human voice and double bass. They just work so well together.
Yeah, the acoustic bass. Yeah, that was a Willow Weep for me. And I always one of my favorite bass players of all time is Ray Brown. And I mean, he was playing professionally from the 40s, the early 40s up until he died in 2002. And he always kept up with the times and he started with bebop with like Dizzy Gillespie and Hank Johns and everything. And towards the end, he would always add something funky to his sets. And to him, funky meant something different, than other people. So I kind of wanted to pay a little respect to his kind of funky bass lines. And then Ella Fitzgerald used to sing that song, and they were married for a brief period of time. But so that was kind of like the reason why I wanted to do that.
Oh, it's really cool. But I suppose I was listening and I'm thinking, jazz singing, would you put that in its own kind of sub-genre of singing? Or is it just, because even the production on your voice, it's almost like it's treated like a brass instrument or something, like compared to other music you'd listen to. I was thinking your vocal, it sounds like it was recorded the way you might record like an instrument, as opposed to a voice is an instrument, obviously, but you know what I mean. Is that a thing for recording? Is that the sound you would go for when you're singing that kind of music?
Well, yeah, I definitely, I don't want to bash myself, but I feel like I want to, my favorite sounds are instruments. And instead of sounding like a vocalist's, like the way they would sound like their timbre, I'd go for maybe more of their phrasing. So I love, and I can't help it. That's just the way my voice sounds. I feel like a trumpet, like that kind of sound, the way my voice can do that. And when I record, when I perform, I'm singing and playing at the same time, and when I record as well. So I'm lucky to have a really great engineer who can mic the bass. Some people freak out, and I'm just kind of like, well, put a mic down here, put one up here, and then don't do anything funny to it. So yeah, I definitely do feel like an instrument for my voice. And I love, I listened and transcribed a lot of Miles Davis and Chet Baker. And then I love tenor saxophone too. So like Dexter Gordon and Sonny Rollins. And yeah. So yes, you're on the right track.
Good. No, my first introduction to that kind of singing was actually the Mingus, the Joni Mitchell album, Mingus. And I was listening to Goodbye Pork Pie Hat. And like it was like mind blowing. You're listening and she's singing, the melody to the song the way it is. But then she does the next verse of the song, and it's the solo from the original version, and that's the melody that she's singing. Kind of, and it's just like, whoa, that's amazing. You wouldn't hear that outside of jazz. And that was such a cool way to cover a song, to do that, to pick the notes from the original version solo.
Yeah, exactly. And it's funny, like maybe not a lot of people would even know where that came from, but it's still great nonetheless.
And I've seen you transcribe in your car. I saw you were driving along, and you're like, is that something you do a lot, like throughout your career, that you developed? Well, obviously you're double tasking, you're driving and you're transcribing, but it's a pretty cool thing to do.
Well, so I live in Los Angeles, so there's a lot of traffic. It's like you don't have to go far to be in a lot of traffic. So, and I have a problem with just sitting and doing nothing. Don't get me wrong. I mean, I might watch TV. I'm fine relaxing, but in the car for some reason it's whatever. So yeah, I'll just put on music and kind of intentionally want to transcribe something, and it's kind of a fun challenge because anywhere in LA is going to take at least an hour. So okay, I've got an hour to transcribe.
That's crazy.
This one chorus, and it's kind of like, oh, I got it all in, right at the very end. So yeah, it's just something to pass the time. When you're in traffic, you can really hear everything because the car is stopped, and it's fun for me.
I'd love to get an electric car. I'd say the sound is unbelievable in them because the engine. I have a van. It's really loud, and all the seals are broken on it. The rain even comes in when it rains, so the sound is terrible when I listen to music. But I'd say it sounds brilliant in an electric car because you don't have any engine noise. You could just listen away.
Yeah, my husband actually just got a Tesla, and I was thinking about that. I was like, oh my gosh, because I just put on some Beethoven, and I was like, wow, you can hear this so well. And I was like, yeah, I'd like to transcribe in here.
Has he got the Tesla that can do the dance? Like if you press it on your phone in a car park, it can dance around. Well, it moves around like in a pattern, like it's dancing.
Oh, I don't know about that yet. they see like they give you the Tesla and they don't tell you anything about it. So he's every day like figuring something new out about it.
All right, there's not many of them. I don't think I've ever seen one in Ireland. I was in London gigging, and the most expensive one, you saw loads of them, but like that's London.
Yeah.
But in Ireland, they'd be fairly rare now to see a Tesla.
Yeah.
We have the charging points. They're like 10 years ahead. There's loads of Tesla charging points.
Yeah.
There's no cars yet.
That's great.
But did it take you long to decide to do your debut album? Because, you know, you'd been playing bass a long time. When was it? Was it 2015? You did your first album. Was that a long time thinking about it? Or was it just eventually you just said, you know what, I'm going to release an album?
That's it. Yeah, that's a great question. Everything's different. Every time is different. Everybody's different. And I didn't feel any pressure to, when that came out, I was 27, but when I recorded it, I was 25. It took a long time for it to become something.
Mm-hmm.
But I never felt any pressure, like, for some reason I guess it's every like artist genre. It's like, oh, you have to be young and do this. I'm not going to swear. I don't care about...
You can swear, like, there's always swearing.
Okay, I don't give a fuck about what my age is. I don't care about that. Who's young, who's the top, whatever. I just want to, share my music. So I didn't have like a pressure to be like, okay, I have to do this by this age. I really wanted to get my own playing chops together, playing with other people, like as a side person, because that's kind of a lost opportunity. Because people just don't have their own bands. They go on the road and they just pick up other people. So I was really fortunate enough to just work my ass off in LA, get my shit together. And then I got to play with this really great piano player, Larry Fuller, in his trio for a couple years, go on the road and just hone my craft and just try to be the best I could be. And then I found the right people. Things were starting to kind of come together, and I was talking to somebody about this the other day too, and they made a great point. It's like your first record is all the stuff you've been working on up until that point in your life, and it's really true.
No, that's so true. That's why a band's first album is always like, oh my god, how is this their first album? You're like, they've been gigging for like 10 years with these songs. That's how first albums are always awesome.
Yeah, and it's you're totally right. And I think there's 11 songs on that. 3 of them are original, and 1 more was pretty new to me. So that leaves 7. So I think the other 7 tunes I had probably sung or known since I was 12 or 13. So and it was just the fun part, putting the arrangements together. And then it took a year and a half for me to figure out, okay, what am I going to do with this? Because I just didn't want to put it out there and then have it fall on deaf ears. So figured out how to do that. And then it was funny. It was like all this people were like, where have you been? And it was like, I've just been trying to get good, I'm here now.
I've been in the shade and here I am out.
Yeah.
But it was really well received. Like, that must have been serious affirmation but like I said, you were saying you don't give a shit. You were just doing it for yourself. But at the end of the day, it must be really nice when it started getting awards and like in the top 5 of jazz albums that year.
Yeah, it was nice because I put a lot of effort into it, and I did it all myself. Like, it wasn't on a label, so I had the publicist, had the radio, and all that. Learned a lot about the business, which was fantastic. So yeah, it felt good. And look, here maybe it's different now, like with social media, but you have to have something, a product, for proof, right? To start touring or do anything or do another record. So yeah, it was a really great experience, and I'm glad that I did it myself and no one was telling me what to do. So
it definitely opened doors for you. You became more Katie, they knew you by your name as opposed to the side person that was playing the bass in the band. So it opened a lot of doors for you, did it?
Yeah, that's totally true. And it was I just have a business sensibility, so I was able to just start booking gigs, booking tours, and I do all my own booking and whatever you want to call managing. So I do all that. So it was nice. I could really just speak for myself and stand on my own 2 feet.
Yeah, I do the booking and stuff for my band, but I find it hard sometimes to sell yourself. it's, well, maybe that's an Irish thing. You're like self-deprecating. You're like, oh,
Yeah.
it's hard to say we're brilliant, because I know we're really good.
Yeah.
I know we're one of the best blues rock bands in Europe, but it's hard to sell yourself. And then when bookers lowball you, sometimes you wish you had someone else. We have an agent now in England, and he's brilliant. I'm not. Do you find that hard, like when someone tries to lowball you or to sell yourself, or have you got that down as being like managing yourself the same as if you had this hard-nosed, kick-ass manager that wasn't yourself?
Yeah, I've learned. So the person who produced both my records is a drummer, Jeff Hamilton, who played with my hero, Ray Brown, and he has many great gems, but you got to be willing to walk away. So when I'm talking to somebody and they lowball, and I'll counter, and this is what we need. And if they say no, I say, okay, then we're not coming. And then, I remember one time, it wasn't even that didn't seem that big of a fee to me for what we were doing. And they said, this is the most we've ever paid anybody for this concert series. And I said, okay. And then afterwards they said, this was the best concert we've ever had. I said, yeah. So you paid for it.
Or you should have said, you should be paying everyone at least this, because musicians are worth it.
Yeah. And it's funny when I talk to, you have to know your self-worth. And I talk to my friends, and I won't really say like, well, I got paid this or that, but they'll say something and I'll be like, no, you're worth more than that. So go ask for it. And if they meet you halfway or a little bit, somewhere else, then next time you ask for this, because you sell out every concert, which is good for them, and you're promoting them. So yeah, you're worth it.
Yeah, and I think you need to learn the business side of things. A lot of people get hung up on being the artist, and they think it's like a dirty thing to get into the business side of things, but you just have to, or bookers just take advantage. Like obviously when you're starting out, you'll do gigs for bad money, but when you start filling venues, you need to get your cut of the door. Like, it's essential.
Yeah. Yeah. And I've had people help me, tell me that. They'll say, you can ask for this. Really? Why? Well, because for that reason. So then, yeah, you just have you learn your self-worth, and it's a difference between like your ego, however you feel about yourself, and your artistic ego. And I always want to take care of my band too. So I want to make sure they're taken care of, and it's worth their time.
Yeah. Well, I learned from the Blues Brothers, never ask for free beer, because they're like, this money is terrible. Well, you got all the free beer in the green room. It's like, oh, yeah, great. So yeah, if they're going to throw out some free beers, I'll drink them, but they're not on the rider. The rider is like the pay and some food and some water.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
And I was reading about this program you do, the Women in Jazz, is it Monterey? It's in California, is it?
Yeah, Monterey.
Yeah. Sorry. Oh, Monterey Jazz Club, Jazz Festival. When I read it, I just got it completely wrong. But you think it's important to kind of push forward women in jazz? You think that they're not as prominent as they should be in the genre?
Well, when this is the third year they're doing it, and the Monterey Jazz Festival is, I think, like technically the longest running jazz festival in the US, and it's really great. And I do a lot of education stuff for them. And when they started this program 3 years ago and they asked me to do it, I didn't say no at first, but it's not my thing I've never had a bad experience. I'll just put it that way. So I didn't really understand. And I don't really care about anything. I just do what I do, be a good person. And, if you're good, you're good. So when they asked me to do it, I was like, I don't really want to do this. I think it's kind of ridiculous. But then my friend who asked me to do it was like, well, someone else, he was like, you're going to be a good role model. I said, okay, I'll do that. So then, but talking to them and when we first met, they were all high school women. And they were telling me like their experiences completely different from how I came up. And, I was like, oh, this is terrible. Like you guys kind of do go through some shit and you guys take shit. So, yeah, I think it is important. And again, women have always been there playing jazz. So I think it is important for that reason to just like, uncover it. Like, yeah, there's women playing jazz at a high level. And also the other part of it is just kind of like helping and guiding them and um, letting them know, like, because they sometimes they need, I mean, they're in high school, so they need to know, like, this happened, and I'm like, yeah, that's not okay, and you can go about it this way or that way, but kind of giving them some confidence and reassurance. But they are incredible musicians, and they're freakishly smart. So I'm the third one starting this summer, but the first two, it was like they would get together and like they had their own, they didn't even have, they did barely talked. Like they would just kind of like, okay, we'll do this and that. I would make like a few slight suggestions. They all had perfect pitch. And so like right before like a gig, I'd be like, hey, let's try this. And they'd be like, they were like computers. They'd be like, okay, yeah, that'll work. And then it was amazing. So it was fun to work with them for that reason. Like they were just like insanely talented, really smart, good people. And so I was happy to, just kind of be able to be there and witness that.
And all instruments, like all the instruments in jazz, not just double bass, it was brass as well, everything.
Yeah. So like a jazz ensemble. So, piano, bass, drums, guitar, if there's guitar. And we've had a really fantastic jazz violinist and then trumpet and saxophone. And yeah, it's been really amazing.
Yeah, no, it'd be brilliant to see them coming through. Like, because off the top of my head, I can't think of too many prominent women in jazz. I can definitely think of some bass players like Esmeralda Spalding, and Tal Wilkenfield does a bit of jazz. She's doing the singer-songwriter thing now.
Yeah.
But there's been a few bass players, all right, but they're definitely, it's time for some of them to be at the festivals now. More women, like.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think that also comes back to like, what's your business sensibility, and being able to stand up for yourself and ask for what you need. So, and I've had, great, without knowing it, I've had great role models in my life that I've just, kind of soaked in, just being around these people. So you just, I think it also comes down to confidence.
Yeah, I think you had a special path that you were like you said, you just did your own thing and you had a direction you were going, but maybe other people get in their own way, as people might say, they get in their own way. They're like, oh, maybe I won't take that path because I just see all these men in these jazz bands being really successful, and that's not my place, because you're not seeing people in that place.
Yeah, and I also learned, that's a perfect point, because I also learned that there's only one bass player, right? In most bands. So there wasn't like a competition of another bass player. So like rhythm section instruments, there's no like coming up as a kid, there's no like form of like bullying or something. So, but if you play saxophone in a big band or trumpet and trombone, you're not the only one. So I learned it's a different path for those instruments for the most part. And
a lot of it probably comes back to what we're like as kids. Like the boys can be a lot more sometimes louder, and in those high school bands, the young fella playing the sax might be kind of more boisterous and getting in front of everyone.
Exactly.
And when did you decide that you wanted to pursue being an educator? Like you got a scholarship for Berkeley, which is amazing, and you went to Berkeley. Was that your formal education was all in Berkeley on double bass?
Yeah, I mean, I studied, growing up in Los Angeles, really lucky to, get to be around a lot of great musicians, a lot of great music. And then it was just a great opportunity to go to Berkeley. And I finished there in 3 years. I studied mostly with John Lockwood, who I really, really enjoy. And as soon as I graduated in August, they kind of right before that, they have sister schools all over the world. And they have one in Ecuador. And they said, they asked like the music ed department for recommendations for bass teachers, and they needed a jazz voice teacher. So they recommended me, and it was just kind of like, I didn't really think about it too much. I was like, well, first I was like, well, I mean, I'm not like that qualified. I just graduated college, but it's the same exact Berkeley curriculum. So I said, yeah, let's do it. And then like 2 weeks later, I was in Ecuador and just kind of thrown in to the fire. And had 30 students a week, a mix of bass and voice and some ensembles. And I loved every minute of it. It was a great learning experience. It was a great learning experience on how to pace yourself teaching, because I would get in the habit of playing during every single lesson. And then I was just fried. I was completely I was like on the verge of getting tendonitis. I was like, so I learned how to to teach during those lessons. So that's kind of how it all started. And then when I did that for a year. And then I knew I wanted to get my master's degree because I didn't want it to be a plan B. And I was like kind of still in the school mode. And I knew that, at least in America, in the United States, you kind of have to have a master's degree if you want to teach at any sort of higher level. So I did that. And I didn't really start teaching until 2016 at a community college, because people would ask for lessons and I was like, I don't want to teach. Like, you don't want to study with me. Go study with John Clayton. Like, go study
Everyone
with
says that. Oh, I'm not a teacher. I don't know how to teach at the start.
Yeah. And I was just like, even at that point, even though I had finished school, I had been teaching, my real like practice began when all of that was done. And I was practicing hours upon hours every single day, because I didn't have any other commitments other than playing bass. My rent was so cheap. So I knew, I would take every single gig that came my way. So I wasn't worried about making tons and tons of money. My expenses were low. So I was just practicing and taking gigs. So that's when my real study actually began, in my opinion. And then it was quite sad. A great loved bass player in LA, Roger Shue, passed away from cancer, and they needed a teacher right away at this community college. And because I have my master's degree, I just, started a couple weeks, and that sparked again my love for teaching, especially because at community college, I don't know if they have that in Ireland. It's like you go there after high school and you can take one class, two classes. Like, yeah. It's kind of like what
have
you
them.
want to do.
Like little small colleges that they're not like the university. They're like in between. They're level 5, they'd call it. Like, it's between level 8 is a bachelor's degree, and then level 5 and 6 and 7 are like in between.
Yeah, and that's what it is. So I loved it because I had kids who were just trying to figure out what they wanted to do in life in general, and they might have been out of high school for 1 to 5 years or something. And there were a lot of electric bass players, and I don't play electric bass, but it was really fun to learn how to teach electric bass players, what the give and take is between both instruments. So that kind of sparked my love for teaching again. And during the pandemic, I was like, again, people had asked me now that I had been touring and like traveling a lot, like people, they might ask for a lesson, like if I'm in Denmark or something, or London, like, can I have a lesson? And sometimes you have time, sometimes you don't. So I was like, well, let me just put it out there. I'll teach online lessons. And I never wanted to do that either. And then I got, I had like anywhere between like 30 and 40 students. And it was fantastic. And some of them have still been studying with me for like, over a year. So it's been incredible.
You can get a lot done in those online lessons, more than, obviously there's advantage. I don't think beginners do well with the online thing. They need the physical lesson where you can show them where to put their hands. But the online thing, you get a lot, like the half an hour or an hour lasts for ages when you're online, because they don't have to drive to you, and there's none of this, hey, how are you? Unpacking all your gear. It's just straight in and you're learning. Yeah.
And I really love to teach. And and I feel like I don't miss anything with online lessons, other than like if I'm talking about the left hand, I just want to make sure they're like digging in enough. But I love it. I don't expect anyone to remember everything, so they can record lessons, of course, but I always take notes after our lessons and email them notes, and like let's stay in touch and make this successful. So yeah, I absolutely love it.
Yeah, I've been teaching like private lessons in person for years, like, but then, and in the pandemic, obviously I went online, but I decided to get some lessons myself from a jazz musician who lives in Dubai, Anthony Mutaraja. And when I saw the way he was doing it, I was like, I'm doing online lessons completely wrong. He's just like there in his pajamas and he's chatting to me, and sometimes the lessons could go half an hour over what we were supposed to do, and I was thinking, what? He's just so chilled out. I said, well, I guess if you're at home, you can give a bit more, like, and if it goes 10 minutes over, you can text the next person and say, wait 10 minutes. That's kind of cool how relaxed it is.
Yeah, I like it for that reason too. Yeah, so, and I knew how to space it out, but like sometimes it just works out in a way where it's like you have 6 right in a row, and I'll never do this, but I had to do it once. I was just like, and I knew this student really well. I was like, I am so hungry. I have to eat something during this lesson. But yeah, and I don't, out of all of that time, I only messed up one. I only messed up one schedule, so I was happy about that. But I think now, since like the universities, like that semester's over, now I'm getting a lot of those students who want to study in the summer, which is great too. I'm really happy to do it.
Yeah, I was really bad for that at the start of I used to be up a mountain or something, and every week the same, because I only had this one person on a Wednesday or something at 6 o'clock, and he'd be like, all right, are you there? And I'm like, God, no, I'm up a mountain. I'm sorry, I forgot again. I kept forgetting. But so I really had to start setting reminders, because at least when you're going to a physical place, you're not going to forget about that. You have to be there for a few hours. But did it take you long to get your own pedagogy together, like what your own kind of way of teaching? Or did you take a lot of influence from your own tutors over the years?
Yeah, a mix of both. I think that I loved practicing so much when I was growing up that I figured out a lot of things without having to label them, just technique with the left and right hand, until I was teaching a lot and kind of looking at people and going, oh, that's exactly, I know how to address that. So a mix of like my own intense practice growing up and, I mean, one of my favorite people and best teachers is the bassist. He does everything, but John Clayton. And so just having lessons with him, being around him, he really teaches you to be your own teacher and just to kind of like ask yourself some more questions, take things slowly. So yeah, a mix of those teachers. And then my favorite thing is when someone asks me a question or I see them, and this happened yesterday too in a lesson, and I'll just be like, something's not right, because everybody's different. I'm not going to lay on, I love first lessons too, because everybody's different. I'm not going to lay on, this is it. This is what I do for my first lesson. But I'm like, something's not right here. I don't know what it is. Play it again. Something with your right hand is weird. It's making the sound weird. Let's figure it out. And that's one of my favorite things, because I'm learning so much about how to teach. And yeah, I love that. That's my favorite. It's like you're a detective, and then it's up to them to fix it and be aware of it.
Yeah, like you definitely evolve as a teacher. Like when I started, it was real get them in, get them out. Oh, here's a student. This is what I'm teaching you. Good luck. But now I'm getting more philosophical. I'm like, what's the meaning of practice? And here's why we play. And these are like the 10-year-old kids. And you're like, here's why we play music, because you'll keep getting better at it. And then I compare it to sports or video games, and I don't know, maybe that's just what you do as you get more used to doing it. Like you start, and my old teachers used to that, and I still remember like some of the stuff, big long things they told me about what the meaning of music and practice is like. Yeah,
and there's only one, like two. I'm not like a big, like, I don't have a million warm-ups and those types of exercises, but I'm like heavy on practice your scales and your arpeggios with these chromatic approaches. And I'll tell you why, because it's going to help your technique, of course, your bass lines, and everything you encounter there is all the answers for everything you're going to encounter the music that you're playing, that when you have an issue. And also like the chromaticism is going to help your bass lines and your soloing. So I'll say that. And I was like, you're not going to realize that now. But I love it. Like I was teaching, I actually had an in-person class yesterday, and I was going over this, and they were like, this one kid was like, oh yeah, that's really going to help my bass lines, because it's adding chromaticism. I was like, yeah, you're totally right. Yeah. And I love finding analogies, because I have this one student, we've been working together for 2 years, and he overthinks everything, and he's mainly a guitarist, but he just has such a problem with walking bass lines and being confident about it, because he's worried too much. And I was like, well, do you watch baseball? I love baseball. He's like, yeah. I know that's not an Irish thing.
I've never been to a baseball match. I've never watched one apart from seeing it in The Simpsons or something like that. Or
yeah, it's just totally movie. Yeah, it's not. It's only in the US.
They're very long, I heard. But my friend was at one. He said there's a lot of drinking, and you're there all day, and because you're drinking, you don't care that it goes on all day. That's
exactly.
How he described it.
And you can yell obscenities. It's great. It's so much fun. But I was just trying to tell him, I was like, because he was worried about like which notes to play, and like I was like, well, you have to go you have to try everything, you know. And there's a pitcher and a catcher, and I'm like, they have all sorts of certain combinations. So I like when you finally reach somebody and it kind of clicks, but you have to find that inroad.
Yeah, you definitely do. Yeah, it is very rewarding, and I think anyone who's like, you know, really into their music should try and teach, like any musician. But I think a lot of people are dabbling in it now that never did, and that's a really good thing, because there's loads of students out there. Kids teaching music is one of the best. Kids learning music is one of the best things they can do, like for their development.
Mm-hmm.
And I actually have a book from Rufus Reid, so I was looking at your podcast, The Hump with Katie. How do I pronounce your surname? Thiroux, is it?
Yeah, it doesn't matter. Thiroux, I don't care.
Thiroux. I was thinking it was kind of like Louis Theroux, you know, the guy who does the documentaries, but spelled different.
He's cool. Yeah, it's like same like in the US, they just say Thiroux.
But you had Rufus Reid on your. I actually have his double bass book. It's really good. And when did you kick off your podcast? Is it mainly with kind of double bass players and people from the jazz world that you chat to?
Yeah, I started it in September of 2020, and I wanted to do it before the pandemic. Since I travel, I thought like, I'd bring, you know, a microphone, maybe a camera, and if I'm in Berlin, let me interview the bassist from that symphony, or if I'm in France or whatever, Ireland, you know, hook up with you. So I kind of thought it'd be like a fun thing to do when you have a day off on the road, or like an afternoon, and a great way to just, the bass community is so much fun. And so obviously that wasn't going to happen last year. So I thought, okay, let's do this at home. And the hump, we just refer to that as the beat. You know, here it's just like, that person's got a good hump. You know,
I actually never heard that phrase. Actually, that's new.
Okay, yeah. So it could be, you know, someone might think it's provocative, but it's not. And then the bass kind of has humps. Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, I started it, and it was a great way to just. Everybody has a different path, a different story, and it's been really fun. And it's mostly bass players, and it's not. I guess no, it's not all jazz. It's been jazz and classical. I got to get some electric bass players on there, but and then every once in a while I'll have a non-bassist, like someone from the music industry. I've had the president of Quincy Jones Productions. I've had the past president of Fox Music, and I think it was last week I had this really great saxophone player, Walter Smith III. So I sprinkle in non-bass players because eventually, I mean, the hump to me too is also, you know, it just means something that feels good. So everyone's got a hump. So it's like I would love to have, like, you know, a chef or something.
Yeah, branch out into other, whatever, talk about anything.
Yeah, exactly. And I like talking to people, obviously. So yeah, it's fun. It's fun for me.
Yeah, that's really cool. Those episodes can be scary, like, because you're like, if I chatted to one or two people outside of the bass world, I'm like, am I able to talk for an hour about something that's not bass? I'm so used to talking about bass.
Yeah, exactly. No, I listen a lot to the astrophysicist podcast, Neil deGrasse Tyson.
Yeah. And there's another one, Infinite Monkey Cage, with that British, what's his name? I can't remember his name. British astrophysicist, but I haven't heard that one yet.
Yeah, but it's funny. Like, these people are so brilliant, and they'll have on an expert because they're like, I don't know about this, and it's like, come on, you know, you're so smart.
And are there any other podcasts that kind of inspired you to do your own, like, that you really like the style of?
I think that was like the only podcast I listened. I listened to like science podcasts, but since mine, I have it as a podcast and a video, people can watch it if they want. It was just more of, I like talking to people, so I just kind of based it off of that. And I like, you know, it's fun to do the research, and then kind of, like, you know, it's like the more you start talking, like, they'll make a left turn and like tell this awesome story, and you're like, what? This is so cool. Yeah,
I try not to watch any interviews with who I'm talking to, because I'm like, if I'm hearing this secondhand, I probably won't say something random that will send us in another direction. So I'm like, in this little, don't listen to any bass players talking zone for the last year.
Exactly.
And I was going to say, so one of your main quotes was Quincy Jones once said that this girl is it. How did that come about, or what's the context of that quote? It's pretty amazing. Like, Quincy Jones is an absolute legend.
Yeah, he is. And he's one of those people that it's like, he's a genius. I mean, he's been around 40s and 50s, and he's 87 or 88 now. So this piano player I play with, he's on my the one with Willow Wheat for Me. His name's Justin Coughlin. He's a beautiful piano player, and he just happens to be blind. And his friends made a documentary about him with his relationship with this great jazz trumpeter, Clark Terry. Long story short, Clark Terry was Quincy Jones' first teacher. And so they kind of met that way during the documentary. And if you haven't seen this film, it's called Keep On Keeping On. It's incredible. And it's one of those things too, like when you talk about first projects, first records, it was their first documentary. And you're like, how is this possible? And they weren't even documentary. Okay, so anyways, go check that out. But so Justin, from when he met Quincy Jones called him like a couple weeks later, I guess, because he had played for him. And he was just like, I can't stop thinking about your sound, and invited him to go on a world tour. And then I met Justin a couple years later at a jazz festival, and we played together, and we hit it off really well as friends and playing together. And he just kind of asked me to do a bunch of gigs with him. And then Quincy Jones would just show up and he'd sit like right in the front row, and he's Quincy, so he could, kind of do whatever he wants. And a long story, even shorter, my hero, Ray Brown, was Quincy Jones's first manager. And so I'm like, Ray Brown's a genius. He knows about business, and kind of taught Quincy about that. So then I would ask Quincy, what was Ray Brown like? And he would like tell a bunch of stories, but he would just be sitting in the front row, and I'd be playing, and he'd just start shouting, Ray Brown, Ray Brown. So that's how I met him. And he's really nice and genuine, and he'll come out to concerts. And he opened a club in Dubai at the Palazzo Versace called Q's Bar and Lounge. And they were hiring his musicians and talent he knew for like long stints. So I got to do 3 months there, and it was incredible to play 5 nights a week. Like, 5 nights a week, 3 like real shows a night.
Yeah.
It was like going into an intense weightlifting.
Yeah, your chops would be on fire. Your solos would be like amazing every night.
Yeah, it was really cool because it was, 3 months. So I couldn't have one piano player the whole time, schedule wise. But my friend, this piano player, Justin, joined us at the halfway mark. And the first note we played, I think we were playing a blues, the drummer and I. And he just was like, whoa. Because we were just like, we were digging in. It was great. Yeah, we were cooking for sure. And then that was cool because I went on, that's when my second record came out, Offbeat. And then like right from Dubai, I went to New York and did like another month or 2 month tour. And then went to Europe after that. So it was just kind of like this the intensity never stopped.
Yeah, you have like touring brain, like I call it. Like when I'm on tour, we'll eat try to eat healthy. So we eat like wraps and stuff like that, with vegetables in it, trying to make something in the hotel room that's some way healthy. And sometimes you're like a soldier after coming back. You hear about people come back from World War II and they sleep under the bed or something.
Yeah.
Or they dig a hole in the garden. So the equivalent for me is like I'm home and I find myself eating a wrap or eating cold porridge or something. I'm like, I need to go back on tour or stay away from it. I'm not sure, but I messed up.
Yeah, I totally feel you on that. Yeah, and I travel with my espresso machine. So, and the band loves me for that.
How big is that? Or is it one of the ones you put in a hot plate, or one of the the George Clooney ones that you plug in?
It's the George Clooney one. Okay. So I have one for the US and I have one for Europe for the plug. And I also I do bring a hot water heater, even though like every hotel room in Europe is going to have a hot water heater. You never know. And
no, but kettle. We like tea in Europe, so you're always going to get a kettle. You should anyway.
That's true. Yeah, exactly. But I bring mine just in case because it folds down. So if I have those two things, I'm good. I'm good to go. But the food is so much better on tour in Europe. I will 100%.
I haven't found that, but maybe in the rock venues they just assume we just want to eat pizza, and that is not true. I don't want to eat pizza for 2 weeks. But they wouldn't be impressed with your espresso machine if you go to. Have you been to Italy yet? They've got very strong opinions when it comes to coffee and food.
Yeah. No, I don't think I brought it on that trip actually. Yeah.
The folding kettle though, that's a good hack. I never thought of that. And you made it to Ireland, the Cork Jazz Festival, didn't you? On one of your tours.
I did, and boy, do I wish I was in Ireland of all of like 10 or 12 hours.
Oh, really?
And it was one of those tours I'm sure you've had. It was, one straight month. And that was the last date, I think. I think it was the last date. And it was one of those tours. I had food poisoning all along the way.
Oh, God.
But it was the nicest hotel to end in. And it was just beautiful. And I loved the people there. And it was kind of crazy. But it was a really fun experience. And I wish I could spend more than, 10 or 12 hours.
What year did you play? Do you remember any of the big headline acts that were on that year? Because I attended it. Well, I play it every year in bars, but I would attend a bunch of the big gigs as well.
I think Billy Cobham was there.
Oh yeah, I missed all the gigs because it's the kind of festival. If you're there for the whole weekend, you could get like 10 gigs if you want. There's just gigs all weekend. So if you come back, you'll have to do one of those all weekend playing loads of shows things and do a few workshops if you can.
Oh man, I would love to. Well, it was funny. The gig that we did was the instruments the bass was okay, but the end pin didn't work. So I was just it was basically on the floor. The drum, it was a complete drum rock kit. It was like a 24-inch bass drum and keyboard, which isn't ideal, but it was it was stuck a minor third below concert.
Really? That's crazy that they would give you such substandard equipment.
It was pretty, I will say it was substandard. And the pianist, I'm fine on the road. Like I keep my cool and I make sure everyone's good, but he was on his last leg. He needed to go home. And he couldn't figure out how to change the keyboard. So I said, fuck it. And I knew he couldn't do this. I was like, I'll play everything down a minor third. And I started changed all my keys.
That's crazy.
Changed the tunes. I was like, let's just, okay, last gig. But the best part, speaking of baseball, it was during the World Series. And I'm a big baseball fan.
Mm-hmm. I love how they call it the World Series, but it's just the American Championship.
It's just the United States of America, North American Series. But I remember flying back, I think it was from Cork to Amsterdam or something. And I was so exhausted, but I was watching this baseball game, and baseball games are only 9 innings, but this one went to 18. It was so boring, but I was so confused when I landed in Amsterdam. I was like, why is this game still going on?
I've actually flown to Amsterdam from Cork before. It's not a super long flight, but that's a long baseball game if it lasts for the whole thing.
Yeah, I was really confused when I got off the flight.
So you don't get to bring your own bass because the bass is so expensive. When you leave North America or even California, you don't get to bring your own bass. You have to just get one wherever you are.
Yeah, and especially in Europe, I don't really mind it because most of the basses are really fantastic. They're really great. And they have a lot of respect for the instruments over there. And it's also an opportunity for me to make sure that I carry the sound in my hands and what I want to hear. But sometimes it'll offer something different. The sound will just be so different. So it'll inspire you to play something differently. Still sounding like yourself. But I've told this story before, but I was in Serbia and the bass that they had, I'm surprised they even had a bass there. The bass that they had was made from maybe a piece of bass. It looked like, a piece of another, a violin or a cello. And honestly, a piece of boat. It was crazy the way this thing was put together. And it was so cool when I got on it. I was on another person's gig, but I was just like, wow, this is really cool sound, and it inspired me to play a little bit differently.
That's mad. Yeah, you don't really have that with electric instruments. They do have different sounds, but for me, electric instruments are in very broad brushstrokes. That's a P bass, they all sound the same. That's a jazz, they all sound. I don't care if yours is 2000 or mine is a square. They're pretty much the same. But acoustic instruments are completely different in that regard. Yeah,
you're right.
And you never were tempted to get one of those electric ones that is just a neck and you can put it in a bag and put it on your back and bring it with you?
No, because I'm such an acoustic player. Sometimes I usually just play with a microphone in front of the bass, but if I can tell that the sound person, that's not going to work, and if there's a pickup, I'll let them go direct. But yeah, for the most part, I'm a very acoustic bass player.
Yeah, the pickups don't sound great. I bought a good one, a K&M for that one behind me, and it just doesn't sound great, does it? The pickups and double basses. Well, it's very hard to EQ. It's so boomy. I think the microphone kind of does a better job of picking up the actual timbre of the instrument.
Yeah, and by the time you EQ a pickup, it's like you have a pickup, then you've got like a blender, then you have like all these devices, and all you want to do is make the sound of your bass louder.
Yeah, I know. So yeah, just put a microphone in front of it and you're good to go.
Yeah.
And the Maui Jazz Camp, that's in Hawaii. That's another cool thing you're doing. You actually have a lot going on in the education side of things, and you're kind of saying you're only started really getting into that in the last few years, but it's obviously busy, very busy. There's a lot going on.
Yeah, it's kind of funny. Like I haven't traveled anywhere in the last year and a half, and I'm leaving for that on Sunday. And of course, this week is like the busiest week. Like just in general, it's a super busy week, but that came about because my step grandma lives in Maui, and I was visiting her, and someone asked us to do a performance there at the Performing Arts Center, and someone from the tourism board was there, and they were like, "We've always wanted to have a jazz camp. Would you like to do this?" I was like, "Yeah, of course." But if you know Hawaiian and things on Maui, like, things are pretty laid back. So I was like, this probably will never happen, Yeah. And then it kind of took a year to construct it and put it together. And then it happened. And so we had a really great first year, because the idea is to bring, on the tourism side, they want, kids from the mainland to come. But it was fantastic. And last year we did a long, 6-week virtual workshop. This year is small because of COVID. It's even hard for us to travel to Hawaii. But next year, because I had it all laid out for 2020, we were going to do the youth camp and kind of layer this and then have an adult jazz camp, because adults won't like to play, and who doesn't want to go to Hawaii? And I
know, that's unbelievable, going to Hawaii. That's so cool.
Yeah, and then we have a teacher, we'll have a teacher track too for teachers, because I mean, here, if you're a music teacher, you have to teach choir, concert band, jazz band. You have to teach everything. So just kind of doing a couple of days for that. But yeah, that's so much fun. It's exciting.
And do you have another album in the works? I was thinking, does making original albums, is that like another vocation to you? Like, is it something that drives you? Like, it's not as if you can say, I've got 3 out now, I'm happy, I don't want any more. Or is it like, I'm working on these
kids.
Songs. Yeah, like kids. Well, original songs are kind of like kids.
Yeah.
It's hard to let them go. But does it drive you writing your own music and releasing your albums, not just in a monetary way, but as like a vocation way?
Yeah. Last year, or maybe the end of 2020, I had this one live recording, and the quality isn't good, but I was like, I've always wanted to have a live record. So I just put it out. And I thought it was a fun performance, but I have been working on, I'll post a lot of videos of stuff I'm just working on. It's just me, and I hear everything else going on. But yeah, I am working on another record that is going to maybe have a little bit more groove to it. So yeah, I am. That's in the works, and I don't think of it like, oh, I have to do this now. It's just, it always happens for me. It's like, oh, it's the right time. I've got this amount of music happening. Yeah, let's do it.
Yeah, my own band, we brought out a bootleg. Well, we have 2 live albums that are officially released, but on one tour we got, those Zoom recorders? They're really good. Yeah. They're after getting so good. So we recorded every night, because you can't, that's the thing about a live recording. If you're doing the professional CD one, the night that you do it, you have to be on fire, or the few nights you pay for, you have to be on fire. So we said, let's release 100-copy bootleg, a hand-printed, sign every copy, and we just recorded every gig on tour with the Zoom recorder. And I did it up on my computer, the best songs and the best takes from the whole tour, and we just sold it as a bootleg. And actually, people really liked it, and not one person said the quality was crap and it was a waste of money.
Yeah, well, exactly. And I went out saying, I was like, well, it's very live sounding, and you'll feel, since no one could see live music at that point, I was like, you'll feel like you're at a live concert. I was like, just put it on while you're having dinner.
Yeah, that's a good selling point. I love the talking. You can kind of, it almost transports you back to that night. You'll hear someone who had a loud voice chatting between songs and all this.
Yeah, because I love bootlegs, and I have some really, really cool ones. Yeah, and you hear someone at the bar, some lady, just blabbing, and you're like, I just want to hear the solo, but this is cool too.
No, they always talk during the bass solo. Isn't that the joke?
Yeah, exactly.
But I know we kind of were messing earlier about like electric bassists all owning a double bass, but what do you think about like people getting a double bass? Is it the kind of I think like, because I have one but I don't play it much, because I kind of came to the conclusion like it's not the instrument you can just dabble in and go out and do a load of gigs. It takes serious dedication and hours in the shed to be good enough to go out and do gigs with it. Or do you think everyone should have one and dabble on it and play a bit like?
I think if you learn the technique that works for you, where you can have stamina, because that's the one thing. I mean, I'm sure you can go out and do a gig, but it's like it's a different set of muscles, right? To play an hour on upright than is electric. If I played electric for an hour, like my arms would be falling off. So I think if you just learn the basic technique that works for you, where you're not hurting yourself, I mean, I find some value in it, and then why not? You know, someone needs upright on one track of a recording, and instead of them having to hire somebody else, you go, I can do it, you know, unless it's like something extremely difficult, but no reason.
That's true. Like I did the Samandel book. I got that and I did all the scales. So when I pick up a double bass, my hand straight away goes into the positions, you know, so I play in tune. But a friend of mine asked me to back him up on an acoustic singer-songwriter gig a few years ago, and I hate doing that in the electric bass because I always play for the song. So I'm like, not going to be doing much here. Like, it's root notes, the odd like run, but I'll be bored, like, you know, because I play in a rock band. So I said I'll play double bass. It'll be brilliant, and it did make it more interesting. But my hand was killing me after the half an hour.
Yeah, exactly.
Even though I was just playing the simplest parts, my hand just couldn't do it.
Yeah, exactly.
Cool. Well, thanks a lot for coming on. Where will we get people to check you out? Obviously, you've got your podcast, The Hump with Katie Thiroux, and what social media sites do you mainly hang out on?
You can find me on Instagram, but you know, at Katie Thiroux, and I've got The Hump with Katie Thiroux there too, and and Facebook and YouTube. But Instagram's easy, and I'm fairly available and reachable, so you can chat or DM if you guys have questions about double bass. I'm always
you're very
down
busy.
for a chat.
You're busy on Instagram. You put up really cool stuff, all the stuff in your car and the 1 minute lessons, and like you're putting up lots of fun. Do you find that you enjoy the social media side of things, as opposed to a lot of people just are like, oh God, I wish I didn't have to do that stuff?
I find it to be really fun because you get to connect with so many people, and this year alone, I felt so much more connected to the bass community. For the first time in my life, we have this International Society of Bassists, and I was just like, I felt really connected with the community, and it's nice to be able to help. Or, I put this stuff out, and I'm glad, when someone goes, wow, this really helped me. If it was like a lesson or whatever, something about the music. So I just enjoy sharing, and I find it fun. It's not a lot of pressure. I'm not like, oh, I have to record this and put it online. It's like I'm working on something. I'll just put it out there.
Do you do that with your phone? Those videos I'd be watching, is that just your phone microphone?
Oh yeah, it's just my iPhone.
Because the phone, actually, the double bass sounds brilliant on those, but electric bass goes terrible into a phone. It's just something about the frequencies. Like, it sounds really nice, like the double bass through the phone microphone. Yeah.
I just use my iPhone. I don't know what it is.
Like, I would never put up a video using my phone for the electric bass, because you just hear loads of fret noise and stuff. Yeah. But obviously, double bass doesn't have frets, so that's not going to be a problem.
Yeah.
Brilliant. Okay, sure. Check it out, lads, and I'll talk to you soon.